It's buffering. Hold on. Oh, there we go. We are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of My Vulva and Me. This episode is called Mama versus Masters and Johnson. And Masters and Johnson, if you don't know who they are considered, debatably, pioneers, if you will, in the field of sexology, work regarding the human sexual response cycle. And I wanted to use this episode to look at some of the things that we learned growing up as Black women about our bodies and things like that versus what we learned when we went to school. We have 3 wonderful sexuality professionals who I aspire to. I was telling them before we started, I was like, I think I can be a little hot. Just line up and out of my league a little bit because these are I feel about each of them. And I have stories about each of them that will be sprinkling throughout the thing. I didn't tell them this part, but so yes, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Just navigating familial and messages and things versus what we learned in school, and how do we navigate our professional values with personal values and things that we know all of our lives, and then we got to school or saw in the textbook or when our professors said something that directly contradicted something that Mama told us for all of these years. So that's what we're going to look at today. And this episode, the questions are really thick, if you ask me. So we're going to jump right in. We're not going to do a icebreaker today. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves because one thing I love about Black women is our ability to champion ourselves because, we've had to do it for so long. Mm-hmm. So I want to allow them to introduce themselves. I'll start with sexologist Shamyra.
Oh, I gotta go first. Well, so for those of you who are watching, you know how you hear a couple saying we got married and we stopped having sex, or my partner likes sex more than I do, or I don't like my partner's kids, or I don't like their family members, or I'm having erectile issues. All of the things as it relates to sex and relationships, they come to me on the Green Couch, which is my practice. I specialize in sex and relationship therapy at On the Green Couch in Louisiana. So there I help couples manage sexual issues, create their best relationships, and have amazing sex in the process. So I am a best-selling author and creator of the Use Your Mouth book and sex and relationship conversation starter cards. I have been featured in all different types of media, including the HuffPost, Cosmopolitan, Shape, Kourtney Kardashian, Site Push, XO Nicole, Madame Noir, and so many others. I also teach at a university, at Southern University here in Louisiana. And I spend a lot of time traveling the world teaching people all about sex and relationships. So hey, y'all, hey.
Hey, you better go ahead and run that down. Yes. The Southern sexologist, Miss Tanya Bass. Will you introduce yourself to the people, please?
Good evening, everyone. As she said, Tanya Bass, the Southern sexologist. I am in North Carolina. I want to go down the list of my things. I can proudly say I'm an award-winning sexuality educator. Most recently, the recipient of the 2020 ASECT, the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists Award, and a few other awards here and there. I'm the founder of the North Carolina Sexual Health Conference that is held pretty much every other year in North Carolina to connect professionals. I teach at my wonderful alma mater in Durham, North Carolina Central University, the best HBCU this side, away from Louisiana on this East Coast over here. And I just love working with professionals and community members, talking about sex, sexuality, and my biggest passion is professional development for my colleagues and peers. So glad to be here. Brittany's my boo. All y'all my boos. Hey,
thank you, Tanya. And last but certainly not least, we have Miss Vanessa Vagesteem. There is no way that you can do a series called My Vulva and Me and have Miss Vagesteem on the show. It's no way possible.
Not Coochie Gang.
I mean, you're right. I mean, do you see the shirt? Do you?
Gang, gang, gang,
Oh,
gang.
Yes, gay, gay.
I'm wearing all the time. You know what I
I
mean?
almost wore my It's Click shirt. Almost. It was. I didn't feel like ironing. That was the only thing that stopped it. But
Listen, I had to go through the bins to pull out another one of these. You know how it is when you have merch and you're like, oh, one of my shirts is dirty. Right.
Which one?
So, hey everyone, my name is Vanessa Geffrard, and I am the and creator of Vagesteem, which is a workshop series and podcast for folks to have courageous conversations about love, sex, and everything in between. Daytime job, I am Vice President of Education and Outreach at Planned Parenthood of Maryland. So a lot of my daytime job is ensuring that people across all ages and generations are able to access reproductive and sexual health care and education. So a lot of my job is teaching sex ed, which I love to my core. Along with the Vagesteem, like I said, I started a podcast about 4 years ago, bringing communities together, bringing Black women together, bringing women of color together to have courageous conversations and to live their most pleasurable and happiest lives. So I'm excited to be here. Brittany, thank you so much for having me. And I can't wait to get into this.
yes, we're going to get right in. Thank you so much. Sorry. Thank you so much. I am so grateful. I don't know what just happened just now, but I'm grateful to have you all and honestly, and I'm not gonna cry because I'm a thug about mine, but to be in this space with you all is just like in 2015 when I first went to Widener and I knew about all of you all, I was just like literally we were on campus one day and it was break time and I saw Tanya walking across space or her, I think it was like some pizza of California Pizza Kitchen or whatever was on campus or whatever. I was like,
Oh, Uno.
and listen, it gets like that with all of you all. And little known fact, the first podcast that I ever was on was Vagesteem.
No.
The very first podcast, and I was like, and you couldn't tell me I wasn't. That's when I started saying I'm a sexologist.
You better.
My title after that. You couldn't tell me nothing after that.
Yes.
I want to jump right on in. Did I introduce myself? I'm Brittany Broaddus-Smith, founder of the intimacy firm and creator of My Vulva and Me. And I want to thank all of you for coming today. Thank all of you who have been with us these last 2 days, and this is day 3. And 3 more great episodes coming up next week, which I'll talk about more. And so we're going to, like I said, we're going to jump right in. And so I have my written down because I wanted to stay on track this time. So what does it mean for you? And we can, and the way it looks in my circle, we're gonna, Tanya's at the top next to me, and then Vanessa and the Shamyra, we're gonna go around that way. What, outside of it just being a demographic marker on the census, what does it mean to be a Black woman?
You just going, okay.
Jump right in.
Feast this question. All right, Tanya, you got it, girl.
All right, I was like, dang, first.
Tanya, perfect for this question.
Well, I don't know. It's so many things. Like the first thing that comes to my mind is freedom. Like I know that's a tense word to use, like kind of contentious in the sense of like, are we really free, right? But in many ways, I feel like, you know how people will say that you can just dress and do and be, like there's a lot of freedom in being a Black woman, like how I can express myself on the outside, how I can express myself with my words. There's a level of freedom that I don't feel like a lot of people value or appreciate in Black women. I also hate to be stereotypical, but there is strength. Like I don't deny being a strong Black woman, but I also know that I need support when I need support. But one of the things I love about being a Black woman is the strength and the resiliency, although it came with a cost, that I can operate and walk in that. And then finally, I think it's just being multifaceted. Like what other woman, and I don't mean, this is not anything against any other race, ethnicity, but like where other women can you see that you see this much variance?
Yes.
Like snowflakes for real.
That's right.
So
That's right.
that's me.
That's it. That's so good. That freedom, and then like you said something really good. We're going to dig into later that the strength of it came at a cost.
Mm-hmm.
So, and being able to recognize that, and just the layeredness of how amazing it could be, and then at what cost is like really powerful. And I thank you for pointing that out. Vanessa, what's that?
What Tanya was saying, I mean, of course, I mean, you got me going. Yeah, but I mean, what comes to mind after what Tanya said is the flavors thing. And when I think about Black women, I think about the identities that walk in the room with me, that are on my shoulders, and that I represent anywhere I go. So I say proudly that I am the first generation child of Haitian immigrants. So when I walk into the room and when I do the work that I'm doing, it's because I am a Black woman who didn't get, some of the resources and advantages that, I'm able to impart on others right now. When I think about why I do the work that I do, it is because that I had, because I know we didn't grow up with these conversations, and the conversations are taboo. So being a Black woman for me is power, it's meaningful, and it means being multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
So yes,
Yep.
You said the identities you walk in the room with that you carry on your shoulder. That's so good, because we all have that. The story, the purpose of My Vulva and Me, right? Is the oral tradition, the stories that we are steeped in, that create, that's made, that we are made up of, and how we show up with those identities wherever we go. That's so good. Shamyra, what does it mean to be a Black woman for you?
So everything that each of you have already said, but also if I think about it a little deeper and on a different scale, I also see that to be a Black woman, although, we exude strength and we're multifaceted and we're complex and we're different and we're versatile. I see Black women as being all of that, but I also see us being collectively perpetually confused as well about what as it relates to our roles and how we fit and how we are to merge into society. And I think that comes because we are Black women, and there's these expectations for lots of Black women to show up in specific places in specific ways, and to meet the status quo, but also don't meet the status quo. It's to be it's to be proud of who you are, but not too proud, because you got to be humble, right? And it's to be, so it's, where do we exist on a spectrum? So it's like to be constantly trying to figure out what our identities are at any given time, and to embrace all of those and also not embrace them at the same time. So to be in a state of confusion, and to be mad, and to be happy, and to be sad, and to embrace all of these emotions on a spectrum, I think all of that is what exudes and how we exude our Blackness as women.
Ooh. Oh, y'all came prepared for this.
No, actually we didn't. You snuck that question in on us.
I have questions, okay?
I mean,
I don't want to be in bed later like, damn, I should have said
that.
Right?
No, but that is so good to show the both sides of it all. Is that, and it's really interesting that if there's the folks who are watching who aren't Black women, who can't readily relate, to understand that for some people, this essence that you try so hard to emulate or to steal or to appropriate or whatever, and this is not coming at nobody or anything, but as like Tanya, I think you said it perfectly, like it came at a cost. And and I love how this confirmation and everything that you all said came together when talked about coming in with something on your shoulders, and how Shamyra said, like, navigating it all, like how can you be just enough but not too much, and not front on your race but still have to do enough to get ahead, and it's a lot. But then even with all of it, for me, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I would not want to exist in this world anywhere else. There's like as much as they try, as media and other people try to pit Black women against one another, there's a there's a communal essence to Black people in general. Like you can walk into a crowd of 50,000 people and play Melodies from Heaven or put surfing, and without warning, everybody's jumping right on in, and it's just how it goes. But with Black women, even it's just just a tad bit more that we ride for one another in a way that you don't really see elsewhere. And so I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And that leads right into my next question. When I said the essence, of which is, commonly called Black girl magic, how would life have been different for you, if at all, if Black girl magic was a thing in adolescence? If at all.
Well, I was just thinking, I think it was a thing. We just didn't call it that.
Call it that.
So one of the things I'm trying to get over, like I need to be delivered, but at the same time, I love it. I'm probably the oldest, and I used to watch, well, when I say that, meaning I watch Good Times, maybe not in syndication. I might have seen some originals, but but when I think about that show, like I think about all the female characters, Walona, Florida, and Thelma. Yes. And like for me, I'm like, that was Black girl magic. Like when Lona came in that apartment, I was like, boom, what Walona got on today? I probably don't have anything. I was still a kid. I wasn't gonna wear it, but it was like her flyness and her wit that made her something. And then seeing Florida being a strong mom, taking care of her family, like, there was some magic in that. And I feel like that when I see those three women, I see myself and my family. So I saw my mother, my grandmother, and my sister in those three women. And for me, that was Black girl magic. It includes wearing Noxzema at night, right? Getting up, cooking Sunday dinner, getting us prepared for Easter service or something like that. It just didn't have a word.
Yeah.
And so maybe my life would have been different because maybe more of the world would have accepted it as magical. Or like some more of a phenom than just the mere fact of surviving, even though that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Vanessa?
Yeah, well, first
you have something to add?
And I don't know where I fall in the age demographic, but I love me some Good Times. Good Time is my show. I've watched every single episode. Shout out to YouTube and all the streaming services.
But it's true.
But I think this is a really good and interesting question because for me, I'm just thinking about growing up. I don't, I think I agree with everyone in regards to like, we didn't call it that. I think it was for me the confidence, seeing that my mother as the matriarch, like, even though, married to my father, he's there, but she always like made sure that, she always taught me and my sister, you gotta be independent. You gotta like get your education. You gotta clear your throat when you speak. You gotta, hold your head up high. And so that took me into spaces where I went to a predominantly white high school, and there were times where those people were lying me, you know what I'm saying? And so it took reaching back into that, I guess, quote, Black girl magic that my mom taught me to really stand up for myself and really, cultivate who I was and cultivate myself in those spaces to get through it. So I think that, now we have examples, we got pictures, we got like the website we can go on, which can be constant reminders. But I think for us, before that became a thing, it was kind of looking towards our sisters, looking towards, that's my girl group, looking towards my mom to prop me up, to give me those lessons.
And you know what's interesting for me? I have a different take because I grew up in a family with mostly women. Like there were some boys like cousins, but most of the older women were my examples, if you will, or the older people that were my examples were women. I didn't grow up with a father. I didn't have, older brothers or even uncles that were around a lot. So it's almost that strength and that perseverance was what it was. There was nothing really for me to compare it to. And so it's almost as if it wasn't as magical for me because it was what it was. Like I didn't have anything to line it up against for it to outshine. You know what I mean? And so then when Black girl magic and social media and, hashtag melanin and all of those things and just like, and even I began to like study the history of us and things like that, I saw like the royalty of it and connected it to that. And when I was just, oh, okay. And then again, like I'm going to probably keep pointing back to it came at a cost. If I look at my mom, God rest her soul, she endured a great deal. She was parentified, so she raised me. I was the oldest. I was parentified, but the thing is, like, yeah, you have to stay home 11 with your how old is Whitney? What's 11 minus 5? With your 6-year-old sister, because I need to go to this conference because I'm getting a promotion, and so this had to happen. You know, so it wasn't until later in life where I had something to compare it to that I was able to see, oh, you know, women, and particularly Black women, we just shine a little bit differently. So, Shamyra, did you have anything to add, or we could go to the next question?
Yeah, we could go ahead.
Okay. So did your sexuality training, or what part of your sexuality training, either one, did your sexuality training validate or call into question things that you learned as a child?
My training. Listen, I went to Widener, so my first weekend at Widener, I tell people this all the time. My first weekend at Widener, I was blown away. Everything I thought I knew, and I was teaching sexuality like at a university, not teaching, but I was like doing as a peer health educator at Southern, teaching like STIs and HIV and STDs and stuff like that. But that first weekend got my mind right. I was like, oh, this is it. Okay, and my first SAR got my mind right too.
Tell the people what a SAR is, for those who don't know.
It's a sexuality attitude readjustment, right? Reassessment. And basically what it is it's an exposure to some specific type of exposing you to sexuality or some type of sexual experience or behavior. And it's basically, you know, all of us sexuality professionals who are looking for certification, we have to go through a specific amount of these SARs to kind of push us into these uncomfortable maybe situations, to see how we respond, to see how we engage, to see what comes up for us. And the first one I watched, I was like,
exactly.
I was like, oh Lord, I don't want to see this. Mercy.
Exactly.
But you know, I appreciate the SARs for what they are. I appreciate all of the information for exposing me to all of what I thought I knew sexuality was. But yeah, it kind of exposed who I was and what I didn't know and how much I don't know. And as I continue down this path, I'm reminded of how much I still don't know. There's still so much to learn.
That's right.
That's why I love professional development with my peers and colleagues, because like I hear people say, oh, I went to a session on that years ago, or if I hear about this one more time, and I'm like, can you just be teachable? Can you be a little self-effacing and realize you can learn something else, you know, in addition to that? Because I think with my training, I started out on the prevention side. And so I was so focused on prevention, like pleasure and all that other stuff was like secondary until I started doing that kind of work with peer educators who were, you know, people living with HIV, trying to navigate their intimacy and sensuality. And I was like, what? I should have been talking about this a long time ago. So I felt like I did all the people years before when I was doing prevention work a disservice, because I was just telling them all the things they shouldn't do, but none of the things that they could do or how to do some of that in a more protective way. And kind of like Shamyra, I went to Widener after having 2 health degrees. And I remember in my first SAR, I was like chomping on ice because I was like, I'm going to keep looking, but I'm going to eat this ice to get my nerves, get my nerves together. But what I love about it, when I really think about it, is that it did both. Okay. It validated things that I had been thinking and had nowhere to get validation from. Like I knew certain things were sexual or sensual, but I didn't have a place to talk to anybody about it or really learn and think about, like, everybody is sexual in their own way. And you gotta be like, it's like, you can't tell me all of a sudden you're born and then at 13, you just become a sexual being. And then maybe at 45, 50, you stop being on. Like that doesn't even make sense in the order of things. So I think it validated some things that I wasn't sure about for myself and about other people.
Definitely. Yeah, I came into the sexuality field via public health, and via the doing HIV work in college. And so when I got to college, I knew like I wanted to do something health related, and my undergrad was in community health. And it didn't, of course, give you this deep dive of all the topics that, you know, all of you and my colleagues talk about, but it kind of gave me like a baseline. And when I started working with organizations like Advocates for Youth, I started really just learning and being like a peer educator, like Shamyra was saying, on my campus. And I was like, wait, what is going on? And it really just launched me onto this path to, you know, educate myself, educate my peers. And they were giving me all the tools as well. But the feeling that I had was I felt robbed. Like when you know, when I thought back, when I still think back on that time in my life and just thinking about my high school, never really went to an all-girls Catholic high school, never got any sex ed, no sex ed whatsoever. And then got to college, still not really having this conversation. I was like, do you know what could have happened? What could have happened? I had no tools. I didn't even learn about the basics of anatomy, more or less healthy relationships. And so like those less taboo topics weren't even covered. And so I was like, what the trajectory of my life could have been had I not educated myself and had I not gone down this path, right? And so I think about that in the work that I do every day, because I'm like, so many people are experiencing the same thing, their background, which, you know, when Brittany came onto my podcast, that is the majority of what we were talking about, prevents from having some of these conversations, depending on how open your priest or pastor could be. You know, your cultural backgrounds could be keeping you from having this conversation. And so my overall feeling was I was robbed, and I knew from that point forward, I was like, I don't want anyone else to feel these feelings. I don't feel the lack of empowerment I feel around or felt around my body and around just like knowing things. It wasn't even like I wasn't going to do anything that much drastic, but like at least I wanted to know. You know?
Yeah.
Like let me decide. But I was in a constant state of fear and lack of being not empowered in those situations.
And you know what? And the sad thing about it is that statistics show that youth who have access to comprehensive sex ed are more likely to delay sexual initiation.
Right.
Yes.
Caregivers or parents or whoever or adults in charge who feel like they don't want to teach sex ed or teach anything regarding healthy relationships or whatever for fear that that's going to promote some type of behavior. It's actually counterproductive to do it the way that we've been doing it.
Right.
This time, because I shared in one of the other episodes that a lot of that I did growing up was because I wanted to know what was going on. So I found situations trying stuff because I didn't have that person, that askable adult to go to and say, hey, does anal sex really hurt? Or will I not be able to poop to that? Like, is that true? Like, you know, so, but you said something that stuck out about empowerment and just and about your body and things like that. So as this is one of the purposes of this series is to bring to light the Black bodies and just the plight, if you will, of Black bodies. And as we know, Black, and we're going to take a different shift, but and we're going to begin to, for those of you watching, we're going to touch a little bit on child sex abuse. So if that is something that is a concern of yours, a trigger for yours, then by all means, take a break. We're going to talk
care of yourself.
And make sure you take care of yourself first. But we know that Black girls are twice as likely to be sexually abused as victims of child sexual abuse in white children. Actually, I think I saw the statistics today that 1 in 4 Black girls before the age of 18 will have been sexually abused. So when we think about a person who shall remain nameless, who is in jail right now, whose initials are R and K, do we think his reign of terror, that's what it was, would have lasted as long if his victims were white girls?
I mean, I can't say. I mean, that's not something that I can say based on the numbers. Probably not. Based on the numbers and what we see, it's likely that it would have gone differently, but I can't give a definitive answer on that. I think I remember a conversation being that when it comes to Black girls and Black women's sexuality, people just don't care. So from that perspective, I do think that if these were non-Black people, non-Black women, then there probably would be more of an uproar. Their family members probably would have done more. The media would have done differently. Law enforcement might have handled it differently. But when we think about historically how we treat Black bodies, especially the bodies of Black women, I see it probably being handled differently if they weren't Black.
And I think the scenario that you offered is like if he were Black and they were not, or if all of the people involved were non-Black. Like I think each level,
it absolutely makes it different. And it's almost like there's this perceived innocence in white bodies. And then Black bodies aren't afforded that same privilege. And our children aren't afforded the privilege to be children. There is the beauty of the childhood innocence is not afforded to our babies. If you look at, for me, you're right, Shamyra, what you said, like, I don't know if I could say definitive. If they were little white girls, this wouldn't have happened, wouldn't have lasted as long. However, I feel like you hit it the nail right on the head that there would have been more of an uproar if nowhere else but in the media.
Absolutely.
If that tape that came out featured a young white girl, like look at what was happening. They were looking for John Benet Ramsey for 47 years. Like,
they still talking about John Benet Ramsey in 2020.
This current day. They're still looking for her killer or whatever. I just stopped following the story a long time ago. But you know what I mean? It's like, what is it? And when you think about what we're talking about comprehensive sex ed and how much would the numbers shift or the possibility that the numbers could shift and we wouldn't be 1 in 4 by the age of 18. I think 40, and another stat said 40 to 60% of Black women will have experienced some sort of coercive sexual contact before 18. So the thing is, almost is like we aren't, based on even the stereotype about Black women and Black bodies, we aren't credible victims, if you will. Yeah. So the things that happen to us are supposed to happen, or we welcomed it, and it's really tough. Dr. Lex had wrote a post a while ago during when Surviving R. Kelly first came out that said that I think she said, and I might say it wrong, but she said that there's no little girl fast enough to protect a man that's not a man. You know what I mean? And so even that concept of fast, and I'm sure that we've all heard that. Is that concept something that's prevalent in any other culture? Is there
So I think that, and as you all were saying this, and I think something that came up for me is that the first thing that came to mind is sometimes it be your own people, right? So like when you're looking at these documentaries and when the story came out, a lot of, and even when all of this was happening while we were all growing up, a lot of it was like, well, if them girls were trying to be groupies, and if them girls weren't trying to be fast, and if they weren't and then it's always, well, where were their mamas? When you saw the documentary, you saw Mama and daughter on the sideline, like, So, and the thing is that I'm not going to act like that's very, what I'm saying is very surface level. There are historical things that come with when moms are trying to tell their daughters, I know for me, my mom always had this thing with like hoop earrings. Hoop earrings was so adult. Hoop earrings was just like too grown, concepts around too grown, too fast. But when we really think down to the root about it, based in survival, I don't want you to go out there and be seen. I don't want you out there to be seen as a person that can be taken advantage of. So be mindful of the clothes that you wear. Be mindful of the earrings that you're wearing. Don't wear that. When it comes out and it's perpetuated itself into shaming and internalized shame.
Absolutely.
And when we're thinking about, when we're reporting, I'm not going to report because I was being fast, or I shouldn't have been in that man's house, or I shouldn't have had them booty shorts on. And so I feel like it's evolved into shame / internalized shame that then keeps us from being out on the lines and really calling out our perpetrators.
But I think that she's offering up a great perspective about there was a protective factor in the hoop earrings or put your robe on if so and such in the house, or if a person, it was protection, but it was lacking the context. So it made you feel like you need to be ashamed because you didn't know what you were being protected from. And if the conversation had just been appropriate enough to say why,
right,
then I wouldn't, or I'm using me, people wouldn't, women wouldn't, girls wouldn't internalize it because there was no why. It was just, it's like, don't do this.
Right.
And there was
but you know what? There was a why. And then when I say be your own people, sometimes we have these very intense stories of people who keep these perpetrators around for X, Y, and Z reasons. That's my man.
Yes.
That's your whoever. And you start feeling like, wait, do I need to protect people who harm me? Or why do we have people in the house that we can't trust? Why can't I down here?
Exactly. Why are they here if I have to put my clothes in my house?
I have to put in my room.
Right. And I think what you said was really good about the why, and that is a whole other issue in Black families and women. That there is no why. I don't owe you no explanation.
Yes. But that why though, but that also puts the responsibility of protection on the child when as a parent or as a guardian, you're responsible for me. And if you're putting me in harm's way and also making it my responsibility to protect myself, you know, that's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other discussion. And the thing is that, like you said, like, why is it if, you know, Mr. James comes over that I have to go put some clothes on, and if I come downstairs in my comfort of my own home, then I'm yelled and screamed at? Because the thing is that, why is Mr. James here if I have to be concerned about, as opposed to just saying, hey, you know, this is your house. There's a certain way that when company comes over that, you know, you dress and things like that, because there's a way, like, you know, even if in certain space, like my mom used to walk around the house, that was her thing. So I walk around the house, you know, in the same way, but I have boys. And so at one point it was okay. But then when they got older and started asking questions, I was like, okay, well, just for that, they did not consent to seeing me in my nudity.
You having your titties.
You know, it's a little, but the thing is, at the end of the day, when I tell them, you know, close your door when you go to the bathroom, close the door. It's because when you go to, and I know that I carry some fear from being a survivor of child sexual abuse, from being a rape, and from being a child welfare social worker. Everybody is a suspect. Everybody is a suspect. I knew it got bad one time. My son said to me he wanted to go to a slumber party. You already know. You ain't spend the night in the house. Y'all know we don't do it. I don't even know where these new age kids got these ideas from. Absolutely not. You're not doing that. And so he was begging and begging and begging, and he had to be in all of like second grade. And he said, "Mom, it's nobody's crazy uncle living in the basement." I was man. Now I'm scared my child. And now because that as a child welfare worker, as a supervisor, I tell my staff all the time, did you check the basement? Because you don't know Uncle Bruce is down there, and she probably is here until you leave, and then that's why that baby is scared and don't want to go home. And so now my son developed that. And so when he started going to school, he said he was using the urinals. And I remember one day I went off like, no, you go in the stall, because I was just like so afraid of his little childhood second grade penis being out for the world to see, because everybody is a suspect. And so because of not having a conversation of why, and just knowing that as a kid, there's a certain way you dress, there's a certain way you do, your genitals aren't shown in any way, shape, or form. And honestly, so that was really like the struggle for how do we, or the question of how do we stop this struggle? How do we create or foster conversations even between caregivers and children where we aren't providing this fear as a narrative, because it comes off as protection, or I believe it's put it in protection, but how it comes out is it really is just policing bodies, just like the outside world is doing. We police our own bodies, we police ourselves, I definitely police my kids' bodies. I'm because there's certain things that you're just not going to do. It's just not. But how do we, how do we overcome that? What do we have to do different? What do we have to unlearn to make that happen? I know that
Everything.
Right.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind for me is we have to be committed to raising free children and what that means for us. I know every single time Will and Jada's children be on, it be, people be like, I can't believe, but they're free though, right? They are walking in their truths, and we may disagree, but it seems like they have built independence in their children. I feel like I can admire that they built sense of self in their children. So you can't tell Willow about her little shaved head and her doing all types of stuff, because they've built identity within their children. And so I think one of the first, I know Tanya and Shamyra are about to shut it down, but I think committing to what our definition is of free and truly being free, because the way that each of us was just talking just now, we have some stuff that
yes, we do
allows us to completely be free in the world.
And that is also even kind of nuanced, because you said Will and Jada, who are Will and Jada, so they have the privilege to raise free children. I don't know if I have the salary to raise free children, honestly, because I don't know if my salary is going to afford my children right now the life and the neighborhood and the access to things that their freedom won't get them shot. Because the reality of it is they're compliant. The way we're getting murdered at this time, your compliance, you're minding my own house is getting a shot. So
that privilege is super important to consider, and I think it's always beneficial for us to check our privilege. I do that often, like even during this pandemic. I talk to my husband about it, and I'm like, we have a huge privilege that throughout this whole thing, we still have everything we need. Right.
Yes.
So we've not gone without throughout this whole pandemic. And so being able to acknowledge the different privileges we have as it relates to the children being free, I do see like what you mean when you say financial, like there's a whole other financial bracket there. But when I think of the children being free too, when I think of that, I think it means for me to unlearn a lot of the things I was taught. Like we couldn't say lie in my house. And so when I asked my grandmother about it, I'm like, why couldn't we say lie? And she was like, I don't know. My daddy didn't let us say it, so I told y'all can say it. And I asked her about a lot of the stuff, like I wear red lipstick. I couldn't wear red lipstick. I couldn't wear ankle bracelets, none of that stuff, right? So also just allowing children to feel like they have a voice, that's allowing them to be free as well, and not telling them just because you're a child, you don't have no feelings, you don't have no wants, you don't have no emotions. Checking in with them and allowing them to express who they are. I think that's a big part of allowing them to be free. It's hard for us because we weren't raised like that, right? This my house, right? You don't close no doors in here. You don't do this, you don't do that. But allowing your children to be people and to be human, that's freeing as well.
And you know what's crazy? There's like, but even that, Shamyra, is like, there's like a schism, if you will, amongst us. It's like when you said allowing them to have a voice. What voice? Who? In my house.
The house I pay the bills in?
Yes. Exactly. I know.
Seen, not heard. Seen, not heard.
Be seen, not heard, yes.
Melissa from Sex Positive Families, she had a question and answer post about if I walked in on my child.
Yeah.
I do, and she said something about making a commitment to knocking on the door.
Yes.
And even as a sexuality educator, my gut reaction was knock. Like, what? I'm sorry. And I said, you know what? And then that right there, I was like, okay, you got some stuff that you need. I've been trying to practice that, but the thing is that's step 2. Knocking is step 2. You don't even close no doors, and it's hard for me to even have to knock. And that's how the only person in my house that was allowed to close the door was my mom. And we had to knock on her door. She came in from work and she knocked on the door, and I made a commitment then to not close my door unless I had to, because I know as a child I felt a block. I didn't feel connected because I was like a guest in her space.
Right.
I didn't want that for my children. And a friend of mine had said something to me a while ago. I had said, why are you jumping on my couch or something like that? And he was talking about how we can foster ownership in our children by saying like, this is the us thing. And when we say my and why you doing this, they thought of them being a guest in the home. And if they feel like it's theirs, they may be more apt to take care of it.
That's right.
Video games and stuff like that. And it's so hard to think about how much stuff may be considered anti-Black. Like when you said to have conversations with your kids, get their input on things. Like,
they don't do that.
Yes,
we do. That's the problem.
Yes, we do.
That's white people
Yes.
like, that's
right.
we do it. We were talking earlier about allowing Black kids not having the freedom to have anxiety or like have angst or not feel good or not want or needing a mental health day from school and like all of those kind of things. And it's so hard. Like I'm like wrestling, and like even as a parent, I saw a video the other day, and then we're gonna move to the next question. I saw a video the other day. It was a little girl. It was like one of those time-lapse videos where she started off as a baby and then she became like a champion of something or whatever. I think it was like Ninja Warrior somehow. And she practiced standing on the floor and then jumping onto the chair. And then she kept falling and was knocking stuff over. And I was watching this like, little girl, my chair. I don't even know his name. I was like really triggered. Like, now get your such up off the floor, and before you break my chair, or if you break your bones, I'm not taking you to the hospital. And I was thinking, and I was really triggered. I was like, I would never let my kids practice nothing like that. Not on my good picture. And I'm like, how many opportunities are we keeping our children from because they don't have the opportunity to try and just jumping on furniture and being and existing and things like that. It's just they don't have that privilege to just be. And it's so because it's rooted in protection. I believe it's rooted in the good thing. Because of course I don't want my babies to hurt or break their arm. But I'm also not going to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and sitting in that waiting room for 9 hours.
No, not at this time. Not in this hour.
Not
in this day and time.
But if you just think about that language, like that's what you get. And if you'd have been sitting down, we would have been having this like all of those things. And it lends itself to so many other situations about how we treat, ourselves. So the next question I want to read a quote from Shamyra, who said,
what?
If you have different sexual values for children based on gender, you're doing them a huge disservice psychologically, sexually, and emotionally.
Amen.
That I'm assuming in response to someone else who will remain nameless, who spoke about facilitating the sexual assault of his child, nephews, and all by allowing a grown woman to perform oral sex on children well below the age of. And so to think about what you said about different. Let me get it right because that was so good. Different sexual values for children based on gender. What values do we have for little Black girls that we don't have for little Black boys?
All of them.
Responsibility and being caretakers.
Say more about that.
So
I know. Take your time.
You don't understand. When I was reading that article yesterday about person who shall remain nameless, but they're being wiped down. I could not read the article without all my hum-hawing sighs. I had to pause. It's just so much. But I was on a podcast 2 weeks ago, and the same question came up, and I said that girls are being raised. We don't raise boys. We don't do that. We teach girls immediately, and I'm a person who grew up with brothers, so I know people that grew up being raised with boys, and I for myself, the way that I was raised was, you have to learn how to cook, clean, because my mom My mom said this growing up, because I don't want you to get married and your man's back here. You know, like I knew how to iron at 9. I knew how to cook a whole roasted chicken at 9 years old. Like I knew all of these things. I had responsibilities. I had to come home at a certain time. I had to do all of these things. Whereas with boys, and then I had to also take care of myself. And if I didn't take care of myself properly, it was my fault. So I had to be mindful of who I went out with, what time I came in, what I was wearing. We're juggling so many things as little girls that, again, we cannot just be. We're not given we're not afforded the opportunity to just have fun and just be children. Where they're, on the head, boys will be boys, and we hardly have conversations about responsibility with them. And once they turn of a certain age, we say, don't get anybody pregnant, and that's it. We don't teach them how to establish boundaries, how to wash their own damn drawers.
Come on and preach this word.
We don't teach them that stuff. We just, what? Oh, you know how they are. Okay. I'm sorry, Tanya. Go ahead. I cut you off. Bro.
Well, no, I was just thinking about when you were talking about responsibility, and we're talking about Masters Johnson and like sexuality as a whole. Like, I think that we don't teach women or girls the responsibility of their own pleasure. Like, I feel like we're socialized to like that is the responsibility of your male partner. So you have
they're giving something to you.
Right. It's like their responsibility. It's kind of like I always use this example of like, you could be sitting in a middle school and I'll use a boy and girl, but Timmy and Tammy are sitting beside each other, and all of a sudden Timmy rubs up on Tammy. Both of them are going to have a response because of sexual response. But it had nothing to do. It wasn't Timmy. It was your body. Your body responded to the stimulation. It could have been Timmy, Jimmy, or Pat, but we aren't taught. Like, we think it's the responsibility of a sole individual, and therefore we chase individuals for our pleasure, which can a lot of times lead us down the wrong path.
Yeah, like to the orgasm gap.
Absolutely. That's why I was actually getting ready to go there. Like, when we don't have the conversations about those entry level conversations, because anatomy is an entry level conversation. Anatomy is a from birth discussion. When we do head, shoulders, knees, and toes, vulva, clitoris, like Dr. Lex wrote a book with that same theme. Like, that's from the beginning. We need to have and the thing is that you are intentionally sidestepping the conversation when you say head, shoulders, knees, and toes, but don't say vulva, don't say penis, don't say clitoris, labia, and everything else, and you send your children off being done a disservice. And we are with the statistics as they are, children who know and can name their body parts are less likely to be victims. And so when we have that conversation from the beginning, then you build children or raise children who are more closer to sexual authenticity than those who don't have it. They have less to unlearn. They are, when you have an adolescence, sexual agency, even in just whether someone's allowed to touch you or not, or whether somebody asks before they hug you or not. In our culture, go hug Mr. So-and-so and go sit on such and such's lap and all that. And so when people are fighting against having a conversation, sex ed and things like that, consent is one of the core foundations of all that. And whether a child gets to ask you, whether child can say no to a hug at that time, is setting them up for having that conversation when they can say no to a sexual event. But we don't know that, and we don't connect that because we're not having those conversations.
Right.
The orgasm gap continues because there's certain things, like even just recognizing or being able to tell a child who is at the age of consent that clitoral stimulation is almost necessary for orgasm. And they've 40 years old, and some people don't know that, and they feel like there's something wrong with them. They feel like they're or they get into marriages and they automatically assume, oh, I'm not sexually compatible with this one because I've not had this pornographic version, knees shaking, eyes rolling in the back of the head.
Exactly.
From go.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it's really tough. And I think about, again, what you said, that we don't raise boys. So being a mother of boys, like trying to find, is difficult because I want to make them tough. because this world ain't gonna take it easy on you. So you gotta get up. Don't cry. Like, are you bleeding? But then at the same time, come here, tell mommy what's wrong. And it's like, am I giving them a range of emotions or am I confusing them? Like, I don't know what's going, how they're supposed to.
Perpetual confusion, I'm telling you.
And then I have one son who is like the stereotypical boy, football, rough and tumble, will break every bone in his body before glory comes. And I know it's going to happen because of how he flows. And I have one who's a gymnast and who likes to cook. And when I was trying to make the set for this here show, he called himself my producer, shifting and fluffing my pillows and all kinds of stuff. And so having to even be concerned about him, like, what does that mean for him? Shows up in the world, like what are people thinking or saying and all that. It's just a lot for us to carry because as people, again, I say it again, we don't have the privilege of being. So when we're raising them, we're teaching them values, morals, but we're also teaching them survival skills. And so where we have to survive, like the strength that we have is we're built by fire tested, but other people, they get to thrive. And that's really, and when we talk about the conversation of sexuality, having a thriving sex life and then the one that just gets you by is difficult. And it starts at the conversation that we have or give children permission to have from the beginning.
Yep.
But even in I'm seeing some of the comments that are coming around. I'm thinking about we coddle boys when I'm talking about raising universally, and I think that leads to a lot of men's issues later on in life with rejection. When we're talking about. So I've been, your mom coddled you even when you did wrong, even when you showed up when you weren't supposed to, even when you broke the thing I told you not to touch, even when you touched that girl inappropriately. We coddled all of that and never raised them to learn lessons. And then you come around at 25, 30 years old and you got a strong woman who's like, so what's not gonna happen? You can't do that. I need you to pull this out. I need you, and who's really just trying in a loving way to communicate their needs, and they can't understand that, so they automatically see it as rejection. Then they go into terror activities, and then they go into which I get all the time. You're the only one that felt that way. All of this stuff. So we raise them to reign supreme over everything, never getting feedback and never understanding other people's perspectives, all of these other life skills that are needed to survive in the world. And then they just end up being these older adults who have no communication skills, nothing to offer really.
And the sad part about it, and then when you do run across, there is like, and this is not like, and then we're just having a conversation, and in no way, shape, or form are we bashing men or black men or whatever, because there's something, the joy and beauty of a black man. Like this is, but when you do come across those who can rub two verbs together, who can identify second or third level of the emotional wheel, and can understand like everything is not just I'm mad, like I'm feeling, disrespected, I'm feeling, lonely right now, or whatever the case, can do that. Then it's like we all kind of also been socialized to even question it, like too, you know what I mean? And it's like it's unfamiliar to us, that kind of thing. And when you look, and we don't have time, but this is the foundations of that struggle of that we are trying to move away from, that you have to suffer for a while, and then when the time comes,
I'm back.
You know what I mean?
I died with you.
You went down twice.
But the reality, it's like if it don't hurt, it ain't real. And that is the saddest part of, which is like kind of full circle to how we started. What does it mean to Black women? It's almost like that is the saddest part of some of Black womanhood, is the almost inevitable pain before the presence of anything that we're as good for. But the thing is that I'm a child of God, and he done overcame the world, so I shouldn't have to go through
all of this.
And it's not going to be easy, Peter. And the thing is that there's a difference between pain and struggle love and just grown up stuff and happening. Because that is what intimacy is being able to navigate the hard stuff when it shows up. To say I'm hurt, I'm upset, I'm mad, I don't want to talk to you right now, but it doesn't mean I'm disrespecting you. It doesn't mean I'm making you feel worthless. It doesn't mean I'm exploiting you, taking advantage of you. Any of the, I'm not moving as if you ain't going nowhere, so I can do X, Y, and Z from relationship stuff. Because when you won't go, like in real relationships, they go like I'm leery of people who, and that could just be me, and I'll own it. But I'm leery of people who say they never ever argue. And
oh yeah.
I
18 years in the game, that's a lie.
And so y'all may not be like, you know, because the things like, you know, Gottman has those different type of couples, and I'm very clear that I'm volatile those volatile couples. That's just how I show up in the world. But he also says that the volatile couples are some of the happiest couples.
Absolutely.
Just how they express themselves. Some people feel like any type of disagreement is road for a disaster, but that's not necessarily true. So people who feel like I'd rather just grin and bear to create this facade of happiness, I struggle with that, and I think that's kind of almost like what Shamyra was saying is like that. Also, identity, like how much can I say before I'm not allowed to say anymore? You know what I mean? Like, how much can I complain? How much can I actually stop doing the thing before I've done too much, and now I'm or now I'm the nag, or now I'm bitter, or now I'm never satisfied, and all of that. It's tough.
But I think the point is the words that you use, like argument versus disagreement. I feel like if someone says they definitely haven't had disagreement, red flag on the play. Argument, I'll give you some leeway because it depends on like how you define argument. Like some people, that's like a knockout, drag out. Like we, not physically, but like you going at it. But it's still a disagreement. So,
yeah.
I think what you're talking about, and the root of what you're talking about is, and just even thinking about, again, the levels of how we're not raising men and boys, is the lack of emotional intelligence. We're talking about liars.
Now I'm dead.
It's too late. I'm still here. But I feel like that's the core root of the issue. All of us on here have expressed, have sympathized, have empathized, have preached to each other because we have communication and emotional intelligence skills. A lot of talking about right now, and a lot of these issues that are popping up.
I just got hot
again with men, is that you don't have emotional intelligence to handle being in a relationship, being able to understand where I'm coming from, being able to listen to me, being able to read my cues, all of those, being able to say I'm a full-grown adult. And struggle love is not our destiny. So let me not, at the first sign of something, you know, being a red flag, let me not run out of here and go cheat. And then the thing that on my Instagram the other day, where this guy put up 3 examples of he calls it thug love. And it was Snoop Dogg and his wife, and it was Beyonce and Jay-Z, and it was Gucci Man and his wife. And the trend with each one of those men is that they are not emotionally intelligent. So all of the women that stuck by women who were like, let me help you, let me help raise you. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't have time. I have bills. I have things to do. I don't have time for you. But each one of those men needed raising. And I feel like that gets down, that's the core. One of the core issues that we're having.
It's definitely, I agree with that. See, emotional intelligence, that's my jam, y'all. That is my jam. I even talk about it in my book. But, you know, it goes back to this, Mama versus Masters and Johnson, right? What are Black girls, how are we socially conditioned to show up in our romantic relationships, you know, versus others? I remember asking this question a while ago. We're taught that you need to be independent, go to work and get a good job and get a good man. So, and we are taught that we need to do all of these things to build ourselves up so that we can be desirable to a man, right? And men are taught, whenever I ask men, what does it mean to you to be a man? Every man that I've ever asked says to be a leader, to be a provider. That's what they say, to be a provider. We are taught to be desirable, and they are taught to be a provider. And so in a lot of how we're taught and how we're socialized is to take care of them emotionally, right? And to teach them that, and we can't do that, y'all. We cannot keep doing that because we're doing a disservice to them. And so when we're teaching our kids, we ain't got the time. We don't even wear watches because we don't have the time to do that. Okay, no, we don't have time. So listen, in the way that we're socializing us and in the way that we're taught and how we are taught to be independent and to make sure that we can stand on our own 2 feet. And so when we get a man, and if we do, we nurture him and we're humble, and the man is the leader. But a lot of times some of those situations that you just mentioned, Vanessa, these men being leaders who's teaching them how to lead us? That's the thing. Like, you're not being we're getting all the teachings. I grew up in the church. They taught me all the things. At home, they taught me all the things. They didn't teach my brother how to do any of those things. Right. So who's teaching the men how to show up for us? And so when we talk about emotional intelligence, we got to make sure that that's what we're teaching. Like, that's not us, because we ain't teaching these grown men, but we have to make sure that we're teaching our children that, so somebody's daughter, somebody's son will grow up to have somebody that is a whole person that consists of different parts, but is emotionally aware and attentive.
Yes. And I think that we struggle with even recognizing that emotional intelligence is necessary. It's almost like we teach it as like it's this add-on for people who are in the field, or if I get to it, or if I'm padding my stats on my resume, I'll add emotional intelligence to the pot, as opposed to that should be your core. Outside of, as long as I provide for you, don't cheat on you, don't put my hands on you, what else do you need? And so when you think about what you said, Shamyra, that they're conditioned to provide and we're conditioned to move in a way that makes us desirable to be provided for, that's at that intersection is where struggle of is, because then I need to, if I'm not making myself desirable enough, then I'm not going to survive. So then I got to make compromises and do this and slack on my boundaries and things like that, because how else am I going to achieve, receive X, Y, and Z? And then when you have certain relationships where it's like this quid pro quo type of dynamic in the relationship, if I do this, you do this, and you have to do this because I did this, and it doesn't work that way. And so when I'm raising my boys, like my son, I don't know if folks believe that much in astrology, but my son is a Cancer, and Cancers are extremely emotional. And I believe Jesus is the Lord of my life, and the Bible is the way that I recognize that. I've met a lot of Cancers. I've met a lot of Cancers, and they kind of flow the same way. And so I'm helping him to harness that, all of those emotions, in a way that's still like, you still have to learn how to express yourself. And the thing that you're crying right now, he's crying over Fortnite. I hate that daggone game. And I'm like, you're crying. Are you that upset over this because you died in this game? I get upset. And I'll be upset too, because I used to throw my controller when I was playing Super Mario. But tears, though, is that where we need to be? And like helping him self-regulate, because he also has mood issues and things like that. Is tough, and helping him understand that it is necessary for how you show up in the world. Like, you can't show up in the world without being able to regulate your emotions. Know your own emotions, be responsible for how you express your emotions and when you express, and then even knowing who you can trust to show those emotions to. Everybody who says, "Oh, tell me everything, call me if you need me," they don't really. That's part of the intelligence of knowing when as well.
Yeah, I think to Shamyra's point, though, I think that the issue becomes like we're raised to be independent and do all these things. The issue becomes then when we meet someone, their expectation of us is then you need to lower yourself and like we keep having these conversations about being submissive and like, oh, she thinks she can run this house.
Yes.
We are equal. We are clothes in this house. Like we can't. It's just. I feel like that's
one to another. The Bible say. The Bible says it's a joint action.
People always want to let me know what the Bible said, and the man gotta lead, the woman gotta submit. Y'all only know that Bible verse, but everything else, y'all are like, what? I don't know what that is. So I think that we even have society telling us these things that when you get a man, you need to make yourself little right next to this man, or you need to let him lead. And we have all of these verbs and all of these quotes about how we should be. And so then women who are not showing up as themselves in their own damn relationships because they're
the representative. Right. The representative showed up. Living and existing in representative.
Be out there for 10 damn years until they get sick of it, because then they have a partner. No, I'm sorry. They don't have a partner who's stepping in to help them raise the children, run the household, and do everything. And then we're stressed. We're not getting our needs fulfilled. We don't speak up, which then trickles down into the bedroom. And it just becomes this cycle of ridiculousness. So it's just, we really need to learn how to show up and accept. And when we say we want something, if you want an independent woman, well, guess what? This independent woman speaks up. She makes a fuss. She gonna ask for food. Like, she gonna do all of these things that you said you wanted. Like, which one do you want? Do you want a submissive woman, and however you want to just define that, or do you want a person, a partner, a lead in this relationship? What's going on?
And the thing is that submission doesn't even necessarily have to be a bad thing. I think
it's actually not bad.
It's just how we were taught.
It's how we were taught.
We conflate submission with subservient. And
there
you go.
We say submit, but we hear subservient, we hear doormat and all of that. But that was not, even if you're looking at it in the biblical sense, what it was intended. And even there are correlations, even in just like basic relationship counseling and things like that, that align. Like they're in relationship, depending on your dynamic, somebody has to make the decision, and somebody has to support the decision as is made. And it doesn't mean that I'm ruling with an iron fist or any. And so going along just to get along is not going to get you anywhere that you need to be. Like we talked about representative.
It's going to get you homeless. It's going to get you a whole lot of things.
Like when David had to go, and this is not what we was here for, but when David had to go fight and Saul gave him his armor, he said, this don't fit. So you can't go out showing up as somebody else. Like if you got you and you got to be, and that goes for relationships as well. The relationship to be successful, you need to be 100% who you are. You're pretending to be anything else. That relationship is not successful because it's not real.
And it's not going to last. You can only keep on the mask or the facade for so long. Your true self is going to come up. Your true self is going to clash. And so you're just creating chaos for no reason. All these things can be avoided.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, child. Okay, so listen.
What we got?
This was good. There's a lot of feedback in the
everyone. Some people are telling us if we can be nice because they need their edges for the weekend.
That was Melissa. Melissa, listen, we can't.
We tired. And you know what? The only other question that I had on here that we didn't get to, and I want to do it just, but I think because we have 2 social workers here and then public health educators. So I love the range, and somebody even said the range of perspectives is really good. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about is this is Sex Ed for All Month, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, it is masturbation month.
Yeah.
And then last month was Sexual Assault Awareness.
That's right.
We touched on all of those things. But one of the things that's on my heart is this black maternal mortality.
Ooh, yeah.
And how Black women are twice as likely to die than white women. And so when we think about Black people represent more of the impoverished community. Black people represent disproportionately those students that are in the underfunded education districts. When we look at the health conditions of Black men, Black folk, we're predisposed to all of those things. And it's almost like, what else do we have to do? Like we've come a long way, but we have not come that far, because the thing is that slavery legit wasn't that long. And so
legit. And the implications
convince us that it was, but the thing that we see the effects of it so greatly. And when we talk about centering Black bodies, and we're talking about reproductive justice, and we talk about public health, and what is the word? What do y'all like? Your public health folks like to say?
Health equity,
trauma equity, trauma. No, it's something about the medical disparity. I don't know. Something.
Health disparities.
Health disparities.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's why is it so unfortunate that the Black body is so highly disregarded, that we die when we try to reproduce, we die when we're in our homes, we die playing at the playground,
everywhere.
We die when we put our hands up, we die when we put our hands in our pockets. They think that wallets are guns. It's just like, what is it? What else could be done? So what I want to know, as we close out this thing, if you had to do your final, my old college used to have a last lecture series where you would give your lab. You were going to, I mean, this is kind of morbid, but so don't think about it like this. That was the rules. If you was going to die tomorrow, what would your last lecture be? So not like that. But the thing that if you only had one more opportunity to don a mic and you had to wrap it up in 10 to 15 seconds, what would you say to empower a Black woman like you?
As it relates to
whatever your, I was just pointing out, we don't have time to dig into the mortality. I was just saying.
I was ready.
I think we were ready for that. That's what we had. It was on the tip of our tongue.
Go ahead. Well, then go ahead, because I just want to honor y'all time, because I didn't pay y'all for this. So I just want to make sure that I'm not,
but girl, the conversation's getting good.
Go ahead then.
Well, the reason I was over here chomping at the bit about what you were saying, because I just made 2 posts, because yesterday I did a webinar for my job, and I do a lot of work. I work in the Office of Minority Health and Health Disparities full time. And one of the questions was like, historical injustices have no implications on our work current day. These are public health professionals. So the expectation during this poll is that everybody's going to be like, oh no, yeah, historical injustices definitely impact. Right. When we had like 10% of the people online still saying they didn't believe that.
Jesus.
And so what I find is a struggle is that folks don't know the history, and they don't know the impact of the history. And that includes people of color, in particular Black people. And so therefore, there's this world, like when I use free, like being a Black woman means freedom, like I know exactly what I meant by that freedom. I know we ain't free, but there's some people who really think we're free. And really think that certain things have nothing to do with the color of their skin or any of the other social identities. And they also think that when we work in healthcare professionals like, oh, well, I treat everybody the same. Well, boo, that's your problem, because you can't treat any of 4 of us the same way as Black women. We all have individual needs.
Come on now.
And so that's where I think with the whole maternal mortality and any other interest, like even COVID, people are like, ooh, well, this is a thing. It's been a thing. It's just shining a light on something that has existed over the course of the years. And where we thought we've made strides, we finally realized we didn't. And that includes all the injustices, racial injustice, environmental injustice. There's legislation now related to COVID that says if folks don't quarantine, if they test positive, that they may have to surrender their children. Now, who do you think that's coming for? That's not really.
Wow.
So I just feel like there's a lack of owning the truth. Like the truth is hard to swallow, but not accepting it is what's keeping all these injustices present.
I definitely agree with that, and especially the acceptance piece. So I was listening to Nikki Giovanni on Girl Trex Live the other night, and she was reading us for filth, like for filth. Okay. And so she said something that's super important and it's going to shift the conversation, especially as it relates to the, mortality rates for Black women. And she said, you know what's wrong with y'all? Y'all don't know your audience. Right. And you know me, I'm big on knowing your audience. I'm like, you got to know who you're selling. Y'all don't know your audience. And so a lot of us are looking for acceptance, right? White acceptance. We're looking for these saviors and these white acceptance. If we want to save us, we have to save us. We can't look for other people to save us. Historically, no, they can't. They don't want to do it. If you look in the screen and you look at each one of us has a different hue. Mine might be off a little bit because I don't know how to work this light, but you get the point. We all have a different shade of Black, and it means a lot. Not just to us, but it means a lot to people who don't look like us. And so whether that's threat, whether that's jealousy, whatever it is, it means a lot to them. So if they can get a chance to not highlight us or not show us or not put us up on a pedestal, they're going to do that. And so that's why it's our responsibility to do that. It's our responsibility to show up for each other. It's our responsibility as Black doctors, nurses, and doulas to get up in there and make hospitals for us, by us, for us. Because that's the only way we're going to save us. We cannot keep putting our life in the hands of people who hate us. And that's what Nikki said. Nikki said, you're asking for acceptance from somebody who hates you.
Period.
We're asking people who hate us to save us. They're not going to save us. They're not going to save us. And so if we keep on asking and begging and pleading for them to save us, they're going to keep finding ways to shut us out. And so that's why I like this Black sexuality field. I'm a social worker too, but I have not met a group of people as dedicated to each other's success as I have in this field of Black women. Yes. And it's important that we carry this outside of this. And it's important that if you are a Black doctor, if you are a Black nurse, if you are a Black professional, that you show up, not just for yourself, but for those who are just like you and look like you, because our lives literally depend on you showing up for us.
Absolutely. And it's like that, knowing your audience is so good, because the thing is that they have been deaf to our cries for so long. So why would now?
Why
hear us?
Why?
When we're in the hospital bed saying, after we just had a baby, saying something is wrong, and
they're ignoring us.
When we say that my child's school doesn't have the right books to achieve X, Y, and Z, they don't hear us. When we say I'm not doing anything and this cop just rolled up in here and shot me, they've been deaf to us. They've been like it's almost like our cries is on a frequency that they can't even hear. That is lost to them, and that so knowing that audience is absolutely right, and just having to unpack and unlearn this idea that we have to show up for them. Is what is going to get. There is a package, and we got to check every box and cross every T and dot every I to either be the perfect version of as close to them as we can get to be accepted, or this token version of ourselves for their entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah. And then and we're performing our Blackness. We don't need to perform our Blackness. We are Black every day. We just need to be.
Formative Blackness. Do you know how heavy that is? To wear the coat of Blackness for this. It's like a coat of armor of Blackness just to perform for these folks. I struggle so greatly with the idea of showing up. Someone's called me one time emotional, and I can't say who it was because I got bills. He called me emotional after I was complaining. I was venting. I'm very competent, and I know my job. Okay, I don't really need in every field I've been. I've always been the worker that I'm gonna do my work, but I just need a space for my supervisor to let me vent.
Yeah.
Okay? And there was a time where I was once called emotional because I was complaining that someone from another department wasn't doing their job.
Yeah.
I was still going to make it happen anyway, because at the end of the day, I care about my work and I need to get it done. And I'm not going to let you hold me up because you want to be lazy. But it was like, don't be emotional because you, because they're not doing something, you just got to get it done. And I'm like, I'm not being emotional. She was like, I can hear it in your email. I said, you.
She's mad. That's mad.
No, I ain't finished. She's like, the tone of it. I was like, what tone? She was like, it's always like,
Tone police.
As I previously stated, this is her doing this. As I previously stated, and I had already, as we already discussed, I said, why are you doing your hands like that?
Right. I was like, what's your hands doing that in the email?
And she was like, and you don't even talk like that in person. I'm like, right. So where are you getting this from? Who?
Yeah, you just made that up.
Who's coming to your mind when you're having this conversation? And so the thing is that the point of that is that
Jesus
idea of us. They have already idea what they're going to they're not going to give us, what they expect, what we're good enough for, what we're allowed to have, what concessions they are willing to make for us. And so we knowing our audience will help us to, it's going to take time. It's not going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
But it's going to help us to sidestep. That is whoo, child, somebody said, what in the microaggression? That wasn't no microaggression. That was
a full
on aggression.
I almost forgot where I was. Like, excuse me? But I was going to perform, okay? I was finished.
You want to see how to, since you moving your hands.
You came close to my face.
I think everybody hit the nail on the head as far as the maternal mortality. I do think, though, is that one, they don't care. So it's like, we're constantly spinning our wheels around like, strategies, and they just don't care because we live in a white supremacist patriarchal society that does not care about our Black bodies. So when I think about like what we can do, and when I think, I'm constantly thinking through in my career and like in my work, how can I meet people where they are? I think the biggest tip when it comes to maternal mortality is we have to speak up. And you are an expert on your life and your body. Who can tripping? Sometimes, especially as women, we're like, oh, I don't want to say such and such because I don't want them to think I'm tripping.
Use your mouth.
I don't want to think I'm being a this. No. And so that leaves us leaving our expertise with other people when we are the experts in our experiences, our bodies, our minds. I know when something doesn't feel right.
Or at least we should be.
And that's the lived experience is like people love the science.
Yes.
But the lived experience, what I'm telling you is what's happening.
And that's why it's so key to teach a bodily agency and knowing your body and that, because the thing that you need to know what's your baseline for your body so that when something goes wrong, you can speak. You're not taught to listen to and be in tune with your body, and understand and be able to say something to her, which again goes back to conditioning because right now, and I know I'm going to get my black card revoked, but ginger ale don't fix everything. Okay. And some things are okay. Yeah. So, but the thing that from a kid, we've been taught, like I can tell you that something hurt. Oh, child, just lay down. And it's minimize. Now sometimes kids will OD because, as I said, I have a cancer. He does a lot, and there's nothing wrong with him. But there are times where I have mad. Nobody told you to climb up on that daggone bunk bed, and because your arm got stuck in there, I'm pretty sure it's not broke. But I'm not a medical doctor, so let me inconvenience myself and take you to the hospital to get that. Sit there for 9 hours when you shouldn't have had your behind up on that bunk bed anyway. But we've been taught that. Just go sit down, and it's better. Sleep it.
Take a nap.
And so then it got to the point where
it's not as big or as
why am I even going to say anything? I'm just going to skip the middleman and just go ahead and lay down. I'm just going to skip the middleman and go ahead. I'm gonna skip, and that's how depression sets in because I've got not been able to say because why? What is the point? Because nobody's going to do anything about it.
Right.
And when something really is wrong, people have had to tell me, my girlfriend told me, like, why don't you think you're good enough to be taken care of? And was saying that to me because I was in a job, head hurt and all that, and I didn't want to take off work. I didn't want to use PTO day. I was trying to reserve them. What if the kids had to go to the doctor, all these things, because I was like, I can just deal with it because a headache is not a worthy enough ailment.
It is. That's the thing. We are our biggest advocates, and I think that
That's
I
true.
think that if we need help in that, because a lot of us have not been taught those skills to be our own advocate, we have to bring people along. So I think this applies to women who are pregnant, women who
Yes.
experiencing abuse, whatever it is, women who just need some good celebration in their lives, like Shamyra was saying, celebration. You need to bring someone with you to help cultivate that skill, because especially for pregnant women, if you know that they're not listening to you, okay, well, I don't have enough energy to be yelling at them. Can you yell at these people for me? Or that's what you have to
Right.
do. That's why you
Because
have.
I'll do it.
That's
Yeah.
right. You have to have your advocates, your actual ride or dies in your corner to really ensure your health and safety, because it is real out here. They're not listening. They're going to ignore you.
Yeah. And Vanessa, that's the best advice, is to speak up. I think that is like vital, because we often do ignore. Like, we get a runny nose. Somebody just said they had the flu and they wouldn't go to the hospital. Go
Yeah.
to the doctor. Speak up when
Right.
something's wrong, even if it's a headache. Headaches can turn out to be way more than a headache. So,
Right.
Vanessa, that I think if we're talking about what we can do now, use your mouth. Like, talk up, speak up,
Ask for help.
ask for help.
We don't ask for help. We just be like,
I got it. I'm gonna take care of
And
it.
begin to practice it in the little ways, because the thing is that it's not like something that I'll wait until my arm broke and then I'll speak up. We need to begin to speak up
yes.
Now.
to make it habit. And so, and even the minor, those little bit of, when they teach microaggressions, they teach them as like minor mosquito bites and things.
Yeah.
So eventually they get too much. But see, me, I'm allergic to mosquito bites. So one is going to blow my whole arm up. So I need to let you know. And that doesn't mean you have to be a nitpicker. And I still believe that you can choose in choosing your battles and things like that. Because some things aren't that deep, but then there is something that really are. And we've been fused the two so much for the sake of keeping people. We've been so conditioned to have to keep the peace, to be the bear, to be the ox that takes on all of the stuff for the day, for the week, for the month, that eventually when we break down, it's like, you forgot that I had all this stuff on my back, but that one thing might not have been that big deal. The fact that I've been carrying 2 tons of fire,
all these things,
all of these times, they don't see it like that. So
that's right.
Yeah, this is good. This was good.
Okay, so for real this time, this was so good. Somebody said, "Who's the burden of being a Black woman?" And it's like, I love it has come full circle.
Yeah.
The majesty that we are, and our Black womanhood, the majesty that is a wonderful Black man, and just I push back against all of the thoughts of us not being able to get along, and I don't ignore the historical implications of the impact on our relationships and things like that. And we have work to do, but the thing is that at our core, we are phenomenal. We got some work to do, and some of us, it's like, but we still love y'all, but y'all got some work to do. So all hearts or minds are clear. I want, if you can sum it up in a sentence or two, if you were standing in front of you and you weren't you, what would, or whatever cause, whatever we talk about as a maternal, you're talking about body worth, any of those things, what would you say to you? Or what did you need somebody to say to you? Was that too much? Does that kind of, I feel like that was a lot.
That was deep.
Okay.
Because it could be a lot.
I'll start. For me, I would if I were to meet me 15 years ago, I would say to me, you do not have to prove your worth. You are worthy.
Amen.
And I think that would have saved me from a lot of shucking and jiving, because we shuck and jive for more folk than just the white people. So.
Yes, Lord, yes.
I would say for me, keep going, keep being loud as you want to be. They're going to be intimidated by you, and keep showing out.
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead, Coochie Gang. Coochie Gang.
Gang, gang.
Tanya, Shamyra.
That is, I'm struggling, because I think, like, if anything, it would be Don't be afraid to just be who you are. All the risk would be worth it. Because it's risky to take. It's risky. It was risky to go to school. It was risky to pursue a profession that wasn't necessarily accepted by everybody, especially our own community. So just don't be afraid to take risk.
That's right. That was good, Tanya. Shamyra.
So I'm like Tanya, I'm struggling too, because there's so much I would have told myself 15 years ago. Like, don't have these children. Listen, this mommyhood thing is a whole other thing, y'all. It's like it's not my jam, but I love the kids.
You love them. You do love them.
Yes. But I wasn't prepared, right? I wasn't prepared, and that goes back to the whole Mama versus Masters and Johnson thing. But also, I would say that to understand what survivor's guilt is, to understand that, and to also don't worry about it.
That's right.
Keep going. Don't worry about it. Keep going. Everybody can't go. It's not your fault. Keep going.
That's right.
Ooh, Hercules. I'm trying to. Tomorrow, my eyelashes come off now.
Yes. See, I ain't even wearing them. I don't know how to put them on anyway. But
that's right.
Everybody.
But that's what I would say.
Yes, that's good.
That was child. Everybody can't go. Lord Jesus.
Everybody can't go.
And everybody
wants to go.
He picked you to go, which is why you went.
Oh.
This gonna turn into something else. Go ahead.
If it was for them, they would have went. I want you. Oh, hey, glory. Don't. Okay.
Come on.
All right.
Oh gosh,
it was amazing. Like,
great job, Brittany, pulling us together, girl.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
I love this.
This was so good. Thank you so much for coming. This is the end of episode 3, Mama versus Masters and Johnson. This is the end of week 1. Next week, we will be back Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We have episode 4, which is Get Your Hands Off Your Imagination.
Listen.
When we're looking at Black bodies and body image with mental health, youth with mental health and special needs. Episode 5 is Girl, where we're looking at messages in hip hop about Black women and Black bodies. And then the final episode is It's a Hard Not Life, looking at body image and sexual ed in the child welfare system.
Ooh, they're all
good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you follow Sexologist Shamyra, Vagesteem, and Tanya. Buy Shamyra's book.
Get her cards.
Buy some, if you are a sexual.
Get some t-shirts.
Buy some t-shirts from Tanya. If you just want to be out here, Coochie Gang. If you're
Coochie Gang.
Vanessa is handing out safer sex packs. Are you still doing it?
For the folks in Baltimore, because y'all ain't quarantining from that D. I got that. I got condoms for you. I got that free lube for you, because I'm tired of it cute, because they ain't listening. I told them.
That, and if you are out there listening and you want to sow into the amazing work that these people that these women are doing, either by purchasing something or you just slide in their or they PayPal, I put the information in the description. I have no money and I cannot pay them, but they love me so much that they came anyway. This was one of these days I'm gonna have some money where I can pay y'all, because I don't believe in free labor. But the fact that y'all did this for me, and Black women are asked to give free labor enough as it is. So it was a struggle for me as a Black woman to ask was tough for me, but I appreciate you all for showing up. And the best
help, we got you.
We got you.
Look at that.
We got to show up for us.
He's showing up anyway.
All right, so thank you guys. See you later. And
bye, y'all. I had a great time.
Bye, y'all. Me too. Bye, Tanya. Bye, Vanessa. Bye, Brittany. See y'all on the other side.
Right.
Those who tuned in and commented.